my name's Mimi.
Hi, I'm Whitney Henry.
Hi, my name is Christelle.
My name is Steven.
Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Our first question is, can you explain a little bit about your work and your job?
Yeah, so I recently defended my PhD in a program called Biological and Biomedical Sciences, which is under the umbrella of the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences at Harvard Medical School. And pretty much my work focuses on trying to understand what are the intracellular signaling pathways and processes that cause a normal breast cell to become transformed into a breast cancer cell and ultimately leads to the progression of the disease. So we use a lot of biological techniques, a lot of cell and molecular techniques to try to answer these questions.
Can you explain the type of classes you had to take in high school and college to lead to this journey of science?
Yeah, so I took a lot of the fundamental basic biology classes from high school. So physics, chemistry, the various mathematics classes, and so on. And then in college, my major was in biology with a minor in chemistry. So with this, I did a wide array of various types of biology-based classes, including cell biology, which is really where I fell in love with cell biology and just understanding and being fascinated with the processes that go on just inside of a cell and how carefully orchestrated all of these things were. I also did a lot of higher level math classes, including calculus and higher level chemistry classes like quantitative based chemistry classes and analytical chemistry and PChem. So more of the higher level classes, which I really enjoyed. It was intellectually very challenging, but very rewarding and stimulating, and I enjoyed that.
Personally, did you face like any challenges as you grew up?
Yeah, so maybe you could get it from my accent. So I'm really originally from the Caribbean, the small island called St. Lucia. And I actually was born the fifth child out of 11 siblings. And, but I was raised by my adoptive family. And it was really, they provided me with many of the resources I needed to be able to gain some of the access to all these great educational programs that I was fortunate to have in my home country. And they really motivated me and provided me with a very strong work ethic. And I think that played a very instrumental role in me being where I am today. So while there were some financial limitations and just resources even in my home country, because growing up I never considered myself to be in this position where I am now. I never thought I would be a research scientist. And every time I look back and I look at my life, I thought you never really realize where life could take you.
When you were growing up, were there any mentors that helped you to overcome these obstacles?
Yeah, I had several mentors from very early on, even in high school and so on. And I think one key thing that they did is to help me to build my confidence, because that's something, even today, I think I struggle a lot with that, especially coming to Harvard. So, moving from the Caribbean, I moved over and I was very fortunate to have a scholarship, an academic scholarship that paid for my entire tuition and housing at Grambling State University, which is a very small HBCU, so a historically black college in northern Louisiana. It's very small, and I think that in itself was a cultural transition for me and a geographical transition. But then can you imagine moving from that into Harvard? That in itself was an even bigger one, and along with the climate, the differences in climate. But even then, I felt like I experienced what one calls the Impostor Syndrome, which I'm not too sure if you're familiar with it, but it's this state where you feel that you don't belong here, and that someone is going to find out that you really got here based on luck and not necessarily because of an intrinsic qualification or that you had to get there. So you keep always doubting yourself. Every award that you get, every class that you ace, you keep thinking it was a lucky break. And eventually someone is going to find out that, this is just pure luck. And I had some great mentors who constantly encouraged me and pushed me to take that next step, to challenge myself. And each time I did that, I saw a new facet of myself that I didn't know I had. And that's how you eventually see new aspects of yourself.
Okay. You talked about the imposter syndrome. What advice would you have for like students of color who are like in your position?
I think having a very strong support system helps tremendously. And that can come from a variety of sources, right? You could have those within the scientific community, like your mentors, people in your lab, other faculty, in various offices. And I had many of them at Harvard from different aspects. And also, people in your community, wherever you find that form of support. Your family could be that too. In terms of family, it can be a little difficult because sometimes, especially in science, it can feel isolating. Like they don't really truly grasp what it is like, what life is like on a day-to-day basis, and what are some of the challenges that you experience. But they also believe in you, and just knowing that you have someone who believes in you helps tremendously. And another thing comes more that helped me is to think very logically about this. I mean, if really this was luck, a lot of people made a lot of mistakes along the way to get you to this point. I mean, you had to go through many rounds of evaluation from people of a diverse background and educational status. And really, when you say that I shouldn't be here, I should not have gotten this award, you're pretty much saying that all of these people got it wrong. And so from that logical perspective, I say to myself, okay, this is true. You really deserve it.
Based on your bio, you said that your team and you are like researching about breast cancer. Like, have you guys made any new discoveries?
Yeah. So one thing in science, sometimes the discoveries are very incremental, and they build on the foundation of other people's work. So over the past, my research focused on two aspects. In one aspect, we look at the therapeutic effects of aspirin, which is a very simple drug that people take. And over the years, there have been a lot of association studies that suggested that aspirin might have a therapeutic effect in cancer. And so one of the interesting things that we focused in our lab was trying to understand, one, does it really have a biological effect in breast cancer using both cell models as well as mouse models? And in the second aspect, we also try to understand what is the mechanism, meaning how does this drug work? What are the proteins it interacts with? What are the cellular pathways that it targets to ultimately have that effect? And then another part of my project that I worked on is trying to understand what we call genes and trying to understand what are their roles in various processes like cancer. So one of the hallmarks is that cancer cells tend to grow and don't typically follow the signaling cues that would tell a normal cell, stop growing at a certain point or continue growing at another point. So we try to understand what are the roles of these genes in the context of a cancer cell, and there are a few genes that we have characterized in that aspect.
What is your ultimate goal in this research project?
So I'm pretty much at the end now. I'm moving on to a new phase of my scientific career. But our ultimate goal was to characterize this drug, aspirin, and to ultimately take it from a cell-based model all the way to an in vivo model, which is where we pretty much use mice models to try to answer our question. And so we now have that question, and now we're going to publish some of the findings of that work. And so both, ultimately what we try to do is to get your research to a point where it's rigorous, where it has passed through the scientific peer review process and ultimately published, so that the wider community can get an insight into some of that work that you focused on over the years.
Nice. What do you think we as high school students can do to inspire like other of our like peer members, like who struggle in class and who probably don't see the potential in themselves right now? What can we tell them?
So I think some of the best advice and encouragement that I got throughout my, school, my years in high school and above came from my peers. So even in how you address your colleague, when your classmates, when you try to help them with the problem with school, you could first start off by first empowering them. Always encourage someone to believe in themselves before they even tackle a problem, and that has something powerful in it. So first, I always start off, say, you could do this, and let's first change the attitude that we approach the problem with. That's one, and that creates a mindset that will allow you to have some effect when you actually go through the actual, mathematical problem or biology or chemistry, whatever. And then even at the end, even if they encounter obstacles while you're explaining, at each point you keep reaffirming them that, okay, so you've gotten steps 1, 2, and 3, we're almost there. And then you could step back, help them to help themselves come up with the answer. Sometimes that means really walking them through each step of the problem. But each time, I think encouragement plays a huge part in how people deal with different obstacles. So that's one thing I think that has helped a lot, encouragement and the way in which you approach your peers.
You said earlier that your team and you discovered how like antibiotics have like a positive effect on breast cancer. Do you think like you guys like can come up with a way to solve it? Can cancer ever be cured, basically?
Yeah. So we didn't work on antibiotics, but we did work on another drug with a therapeutic effect. So the question you asked me is, can we ever overcome it? I would like to be very optimistic. I think we've made a lot of strides in the cancer field, in the areas of early detection, as well as understanding what are the fundamental processes that lead to the development of the disease. Right now, we're at the stage where we can actually use that information for drug discovery-based approaches. And it takes a long process before we can really evaluate whether a drug is effective. But I think with the amount of information that we have now, I think it is very promising. So I am very hopeful about it, actually.
What do you think the future of science will look like?
Exciting. I think now we have so many great tools. Second is that science is it's not as isolated as it used to be. There's a lot more collaboration happening from people with computational biology all the way to, the development of the drug. And because of that collaborative nature that's going on in science, I think it opens up so many doors for people of different backgrounds and different expertise. So I think it's a great time to be in science, actually.
That's awesome. I agree with you. Me and my peers were discussing how science is deserving of more diversity, because it's often believed, like since Galileo Galilei's time and all those earlier scientists, that it's mostly a Western view on science. But now we wanted to ask you, like, how would you motivate different communities of different colors, because everyone has great ideas, to like enter into the science field, and how to help motivate them to stay, because science is a really challenging.
Yeah, I think being upfront with people about, so going back, let's start with how do you even motivate people to get involved? Maybe highlight the impact that science can have and has had over the years. If people can appreciate, the importance of this whole process, maybe they will feel more motivated to be part of it. And the second is, how do you stay once you get in? Well, I think being upfront with people about the challenges that you will encounter. You know, this is how it's going to be once you enter this process. These are the things that you will encounter on a day-to-day basis. And so people are a little more aware of what they are getting into, and can prepare in a way that will sustain them once they get in.
Oh yeah, you said that diversity is important, like to like get more research done. But like today, it's like more of a Western view based on what she said. Like, how do we get other people like engaged into like the research we're doing?
You mean globally?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think right now there is just a lot of collaboration. So now you have a lot of scientific meetings on an international level where people from all over the globe come to exchange ideas, exchange resources and reagents. So I don't think it's as maybe what we expose to the public seems as if it's very limited to the United States or this part of the world. But actually in the science community, great science is going on all over the world, and there is a lot of exchange of information through articles that people publish, through discussions at scientific meetings, where we do have a lot of exchange with other science entities around the globe.
As you said, there is already a great improvement compared to before, but do you think this is enough for us as a community, as humans working together, or do you think there's better ways to solve the diversity problem as a whole?
Oh yeah, I mean there's always room for improvement. Clearly, it's still not enough. I think we still need to put more effort needs to be put in place to increase diversity in the science field, and not even just at the level of recruiting people, but also supporting scientists of various backgrounds once they are in the PhD programs or in the labs. So and a lot of dialogue needs to happen for these types of initiatives to be started.
Do you ever see yourself in like teaching science or in that like type of field?
So it's funny you said that, because when I graduated from high school at the age of 18, I taught as a science teacher for a year. Yes, at a high school. And it was really, very gratifying. So I was a science and math teacher there. And over my years in college as well as in grad school, I've done a lot of mentoring throughout the years, and that's also part of the science teaching, umbrella. And my last experience was a few months ago, where I was a teaching fellow for one of the molecular and cell biology classes at Harvard College. And that was a great experience. I mean, it's just fascinating to see, a student come to you and ask about a biological concept, and to, at the end of the day, realize that, hey, this student understands that concept. And also to just help to train a mind to think a certain way, to think logically, to probe and to ask interesting questions and things of that nature. And that's also another way in which you could promote diversity, right? Who are the people in your classroom? Who are the scientists? Who are the people that other students around see in leadership roles?
To the challenges that you encountered, like to go to science, did you have any mentors, like people to help you during those times?
Yeah. So even in undergrad, I had a lot of great mentors. My professors at undergrad were my mentors. Now, one thing about Grambling is we only had 2 or 3 biology research labs, and that's really small relative to the number of labs you have at, say, a place like Harvard. And I had my one professor, his name is Dr. Quincy Quick, and he truly believed in me and said, you need to be exposed to what research is like at a Research 1 institution. And so every summer that I was there, I went to one of the bigger institutions to do summer research, and get to see what it's like in these places with all of these types of resources. And then growing up, I still wasn't sure. Even in college, with all my summer experiences, I still wasn't sure that I wanted to do research. I thought I would become a dentist, actually. And then it was up until my last summer research opportunity at UT Southwestern in Dallas, Texas, that I really realized I wanted to do research. And it happened because during that summer experience, I asked to get time off to attend a dental school admissions workshop and to visit a dental school in Arizona. And I realized that compared to all of my colleagues who were there, I was not half as excited as I thought I would have been about entering dental school. And instead, I found myself half the time planning experiments for when I got back to my lab at UT Southwestern. And here I was, with both opportunities happening simultaneously, and it was very evident to me which one stood out. And one thing I describe my relationship with science as love-hate. Really. I love it because it's exciting, it's stimulating, you get to discover something new. But it's because you've invested so much of your time, and sometimes there's a lot of delayed gratification in science. There's a lot of times when you need to troubleshoot. It makes you feel sometimes, very frustrated. And that's, I would say, is the hate part. But in the end, when something actually works or you discover something new, it's worth it in the end. You forget about the hard days when things didn't work.
You mentioned that there's many opportunities and resources out there. How do you think we can help to deliver the resources to the younger generation, make them aware that there is a thing as science that's really deeper than and more complex than what they thought and what they learned from the media?
Right. So, you could really start off in your schools and the organizations that you guys are part of, and maybe tap into some of the social networks and the places where you will be able to target these different audiences. So I know, there are a lot of social media out there, videos like what you guys are doing, that's pretty awesome. Getting the stories of other scientists out there through different ways, whether it's through writing, through the arts. So finding creative ways to expose your peers to what science is like, both the good and the not. I wouldn't say the bad, but the good and the challenging parts. I think people need to have a holistic idea of what the scientific process entails. But finding creative ways, I would say, to do that would be key.
As a female scientist, it's actually quite normal to see a female scientist now versus like in the past.
Yeah.
So did you ever face challenges because of who you were, despite knowing that your gender has nothing to do with what you're capable of?
I don't think fortunately, I have experienced it blatantly. But I think that's probably because Harvard does such a great job about being upfront about issues concerning women in science.
That's awesome.
So I'm part of a group called Harvard Graduate Women in Science and Engineering, and here we get paired to like a faculty member or postdoc who is a scientist, and there you could express, how you feel on a day-to-day basis. You get good advice if you're transitioning to a next, another career or another step in your scientific life. And that has been tremendously helpful. And I think being here, it's an environment of tolerance and respect. And I think that kind of helps in that way.
That's good.
You see science as like fascinating, but to other people, like they don't know like which career they want to pursue and stuff. Like how do we find ourselves? Like what?
Yeah, you ask a lot of questions and you give yourself the opportunity to experience it. And then you will really know if this is for you. So for example, if there are opportunities around where you could spend a summer in a research lab, try it out, give it a shot. The worst that could happen is you leave there saying, I never want to do this again, right? And there are a lot of opportunities out there where you could do that. Have coffee, or I don't know if you drink coffee at this time. Okay. Meet up with someone who is in the field that you're interested in, and ask them questions. How did you get involved? What are some of the challenges? What advice would you give to me at this point in where I am right now in my educational level? Things like that. And getting that rapport, will help you to, clarify what it is that you really want to do. And there are resources out there. So one needs to be very proactive in searching and making the right networks that will help you to get those experiences that you need.
Science is definitely a very important aspect of our current lives, and it will be also in the future, maybe even more.
Mhm.
So are there a message that you want to send to our future generation about science?
Yeah, there are lots of messages, but I would just say, to keep being excited about it. Keep that enthusiasm, keep that that intrigue going. And once you have that passion for science, it will sustain you through those difficult times. And it will also spark new ideas, and that will keep, the scientific process going.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Like 10 years from now, like we watched a video, my classmates and I, about how like there were certain jobs in 2010 that were created that didn't even exist in 2004. So because of the growing technology now, what type of jobs do you think will be created in the science fields?
Oh, I think there will be a lot of interplay between computational work and different aspects of biology. And I think another growing area is pharma and biotech. That's another big part of the scientific enterprise. There's also a lot of interplay between like the business sectors and consulting firms and the scientific world. And also I think there's a big I would say a growth in science and the liberal arts, finding very interesting and creative ways of exposing science or disseminating science to the wider community. So now there are ways of, getting an interplay between science and someone who might be interested in theater or in the visual arts or things, or, finding these are some of the ways. Also in terms of education, what are the various interfaces that people use to disseminate science in the classroom? How are the textbooks written compared to, back in the day? What are some of those devices that we could use in class to make it a more interactive and fun experience for our students? So, there are jobs I think there's a cross-talk for different types of talents with scientific jobs in the future.
Science is like a really important factor in our lives right now. But how to put a line between like creativity and insanity, basically?
Well, I think with the science we have certain rules and different ethical restrictions that all universities and scientific entities follow. So even when you have to get money, for example, to perform certain experiments in a lab, typically you have to write a proposal, and then that proposal gets sent to that funding agent, whether it's the NIH or a foundation, and then you have people who review that grant, typically scientists and other legislators, depending on where it is. So these are the people who are interested with whether this type of research is funded and then ultimately takes place. Also at universities too, there are people who will ensure that we're working with certain types of, biological agents. And so that I think we've done a very good job with over the years, regulation of science.